All right, welcome everybody. My name is Calvenn Starre, and I am the founder and CEO of Living to Be. You're listening to the Living to Be Level Up Call. Today is Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. I'm really excited that you're here. Just want to say thank you so much for dialing in. And we're going to start out a little bit with our Living to Be mission statement to kind of set the tone. Our mission with Living to Be is to spread hope, helping others prosper eternally, and inspire total fulfillment in the lives of others. As a company and as individuals, everything we do is to inspire others to live with integrity through finding their own sense of truth and purpose, knowing that every decision, intention, and action matters because of the people they affect. And today our talk is with our special guest, Crystena Starre, also happens to be my wife and the co-founder of the Living to Be FITT program. And I'm really excited to have her, be able to share. I know she draws a lot of attention whenever she speaks because I think the way she speaks is just pretty amazing. Even though I fought it for years in our relationship and our marriage, I think today's subject is probably one of those, I don't even know if I'm going to use the right word. Here we are talking about communications, but it's like the epitome of what relationships are founded on. And to me, it's something that is going to require a lifetime of mastery. I think a lot of people get really focused on the idea that they should complete something before it works. And, communication and the art of communication is something that I can remember studying back 10, 15 years ago, where, I was reading the nonviolent communication. I don't remember who he was, but it's a really great book. And so, just all of these different facets, and obviously learning how to speak, speaking in front of people on a stage is totally different from being intimate with somebody and just speaking to somebody one-on-one. So the communication artwork that we're going to be, and that Crystena is going to be sharing about is going to be really powerful. And I would encourage you that when this call does come out on video or podcast, that you share it with people that you want to encourage. And, there's a way to invite people to learn about communication. It's not telling them you're an idiot when you speak, you need to listen to this, right? It's more of an invitation to them and say, hey, listen, I came across something that is really, really powerful for me, and it really helped me understand some things about the way that I communicate. And I was hoping that maybe you'd be interested to learn a little bit more as well. So with that being said, I'm going to turn this over to Crystena, and she's going to take it. I'm going to jump in here and there and, work out our communication challenges. All right, Crystena, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so wow, this is going to be a fun one. I have to admit, I'm a little nervous about this call because communication is tricky. It's so complex, and one of my biggest challenges in life has been not feeling heard and believing that I'm speaking very clearly and going, man, what is the other person hearing? And we can't control that. A little technical difficulties here. I forgot to put my earpiece in, so.
Sorry.
So communication, just not feeling heard, and how can we feel heard when what we're saying is not what the other person is hearing. And today I want to focus a little bit on the authentic part of communication. And, I'm going to share a little bit from a personal story here, something I'm really experiencing right now in the moment with communicating, and it's communicating with the ex-husband about parenting, co-parenting. And, he wants me to put my daughter on a plane, and there's a lot of different dynamics involved. And I said, hey, we'll talk about it, but not tonight. I'm really tired. And his response to that was, you can't use our daughter as leverage. I have a right to see my daughter, and just because I lost my job doesn't mean that I don't get to see my daughter. And I sit back and I read this and I just go, wow, that's an interesting story you're telling yourself right now, because I would never used my children as leverage. And it's really challenging to communicate with someone that is so in their head. So this is what creates the problem when we're communicating. And it's a necessary part of life. We have to be able to communicate with each other to have rewarding intimate relationships, whether they're friendships, whether they're, more intimate than that. It's just a requirement that has to be there. So how can we become better communicators? Because we can all improve at many, many things in our lives. We become better versions of ourselves every day. And that's why you guys are here on this call. So kudos to you. This is you leveling up. So what do I do with this dilemma that I have where I say, I'm not feeling heard? I've said that we need to talk about something and you're going off on a tangent or making up a story. And this is the starting point for all of us. When we are communicating and somebody, quote unquote, comes at us and attacks us and says, well, you did this, or I'll just use my example. You're using our children as leverage and you don't have a right to keep me from my daughter. Well, I could easily go on the defensive, and this is kind of what happens in Communication 101, kind of the rough draft we're given and taught as we're growing up. I would then go on the defensive and go, well, I'm not using my daughter as leverage. I'm doing all of these other things, and I gather proof as to why I'm not using my daughter as leverage. And so now what happens is, I may say, you're doing this. And then he comes back on the defensive. And now what we've got is we've got two people in battle position, going at it, defending themselves, making the other person wrong. And now you get into tit for tat. And you're stuck here. And this is how the majority of the people have learned to communicate. And it's extremely frustrating. It escalates until it blows up. And maybe one person walks away, maybe both people walk away, but there's nothing really resolved and there's high emotion. And it's just like, what do I do with this? And it's really, really frustrating. So I want to offer that I actually took some notes because communication is such a tricky thing and it's very, very complex and it's very dynamic. And I want to make sure that I'm coherent for you guys and making sense and give you something to work with. So the best offense is to not go into defending yourself. Try to become aware of, I just jumped into defending myself because what this person just said is totally not true. And if you can bring that awareness, there we are back to awareness, the first step in anything. If you can bring that awareness to it, now you have the power to get curious and ask questions. Well, you didn't really lose all of that weight. I think you're lying to everybody. And instead of going, well, let me show you pictures of myself, like I'll prove to you that I really have lost the weight, like this isn't a trick. Instead of going there, bring awareness and get curious. Asking questions is the best way to get the answers, and it's the path to resolution. So if you can ask that other, wow, that's really interesting that you believe I'm lying about my weight loss. What makes you think that I'm not being honest about my weight loss? And, I call it the art of communication because I'd love to believe that, hey, it's just that simple. And now this other person's going to go, oh, well, I saw this picture and it looked like you photoshopped it. And that's why I thought it. And, you can kind of work from there. But most people have the defenses up and, the attack will just come from a different angle. So it's a process is what I'm trying to say here. And it can be a very difficult process. But if you start with awareness of asking yourself this one question, if somebody comes at you and attacks you and you get triggered emotionally and you start to respond from that defensive place, you bring awareness to that moment and going, ooh, I'm triggered. That's a signal that something is happening here. Here's an opportunity for me to grow and get curious. Ask yourself, the first question is, what's the story I'm making up in my mind about what this person just said? So if Calvin comes at me and says, well, I don't believe you lost all that weight, Crystena, I think you're lying to everybody. and I start to flare up and want to defend myself and go, okay, let me stop and say, what's the story I'm telling myself about why this person doesn't believe that I've lost the weight? Yeah, go ahead.
Let me jump in here too, because the process of being able to level up here, and the really key piece of this ability to communicate, is recognizing, see, the one thing that I think is most challenging for people is that we get into the blame game. Well, you said this, and so it caused me to do this, or, and it goes back to scripture, which says the eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. And it's like, you can't keep coming at somebody over and over just because they came at you. And to level up your life, right? This is what this call is all about. To level up your life, if you really want to become the communicator, you have to be willing to be the one that steps up their game. That basically says, you know what? And this is something my friend Rick used to do, and also too, it's great to do in a relationship, is just to sit back and let the other person express. You don't have to tell them, hey, I'm just not going to say anything. Just let them express, let them talk, let them just get it all out. And what I would encourage you to do, which is something that I watch Crystena do all the time when we're on conference calls, when we're on one-on-one calls, she takes notes. She constantly is taking notes. Why? Because she's allowing the other person to communicate fully without interrupting them and capturing her thoughts down about what's being said. Because whenever something gets triggered, you should write it down and let it be heard. Like writing it down is letting it be heard. You shouldn't interrupt, because if you're going to interrupt the flow, what you're doing is you're creating turbulence. So think about that as you communicate with people. If you interrupt them, if you shut them off, if you shut them down, if you interrupt to say what you need to say, you're creating turbulence in the relationship. And in true communication, it should be allowed to be able to express, and then the other person should feel like they're allowing, and then you'll be able to express your end of it. Yes.
Yeah, I want to go ahead and interrupt you here for a second. This is what I love. It just really helps facilitate things and thoughts. And when we are anxious to interrupt somebody and prove them wrong, or like Calvenn was saying, I need to be heard right now in this moment, we've gone into our already listening mode. And when we are in our already listening mode, we are accessing the information from our past experiences, from our filters, and we are not truly hearing what the other person is saying and trying to express. And that is what keeps us in the blame game, the tit for tat, this unresolvable, argumentative, crappy style of communication that is just hurtful to everybody involved. So I just wanted to point that out, because that's one of the key things that happens. And we really need to become good listeners, like really good listeners. And we do that by getting curious about the other person's perspective. Instead of needing to make ourselves heard, okay, let's get curious about what the other person is really trying to say and really trying to express. And we cultivate that curiosity by asking ourselves, what's the story I'm making this mean? And then really listening to the other person as best we can. And sometimes jotting down those notes is extremely helpful, because when emotions are high, intelligence is low, and it is a process, but it does get easier to cultivate this as we practice it.
Yeah, so and so the point of this to level up is to, somebody's got to take the first step. Somebody's got to be willing to become the bigger person. And right, that's leveling up. When you level up in your life, you're becoming stronger, you're becoming more expansive, you're becoming more open. And so somebody has to take that stand. If you continue to belittle each other, or you continue to attack each other, you're never really going to get anywhere. And so one of the things that Crystena and I did early on in the relationship is there are times where we just said, okay, one person is not allowed to speak, and the other person can speak, and the other person can take notes, and they can write down things. And so that's one way of being able to communicate, to really bring awareness to this idea of communication. And so, try that with your teenager, try that with your child, and you'll watch how things begin to become very apparent, and you become very aware of what's going on. And that's what this is. And it, like she's saying, there's an art to it. everybody who so badly wants to be heard, wants to be right. And I love Wayne Dyer when he said, you can either be right or you can be happy. And it doesn't mean that you have to let people walk all over you, but it does mean that if you really want to get to the root of something, you have to allow somebody to express to where they feel heard, so that then they can let down their defenses. I think that's one thing that happens a lot, is when somebody is coming at you, that awareness needs to be in place so that you can understand that they're not coming at you. They're screaming at life to be heard. They're wanting to be seen. And so the moment that you do that, there's a method that we learned at a parent-teacher conference that we went to when my son was in a therapeutic home. We went to one of their parenting, and it's called the RAC method. It's the recognize, acknowledge,
repeat, so that you repeat what the person has said so that they feel heard. You acknowledge, basically validate how they feel, and then you connect. Because like you were just saying, I love what you just shared. When we get defensive, we shut down, we put our armor on, we aren't open, we're closed. We are closed for business. And you cannot connect with somebody who is shut down and closed and protecting themselves. And there is no opening. So what do people, like you said, what do people need to feel open? They need to feel heard. They need to feel validated. I hear you, and how you feel is totally okay. Doesn't mean you have to agree with them and make them right, but they need that in order for connection to then happen.
And they need to feel safe. Think of them as a turtle in a shell. If they don't feel safe, they're going to withdraw, and they're going to put up that shield, and there's nothing you can do to get inside. Okay, you can try, you can pry, you can beat up, you can throw it around, you can hurt it, you can abuse it, you can do whatever you need to do, but you're never going to get them to open up. And so in the RAC method, the repeat, acknowledge, and then connect, there's some really great examples, because I really want you to get this, because it's not about resolving anything in that moment. Okay, so when you're having this is great for parenting, because I know that one of the things that Crystena are going to come out with is a program on co-parenting, because we've both done it, and we've both had our challenges, and we've both been able to grow through that. And I believe there's a huge market for people that are looking to co-parent, because I don't know if any of you have had this experience, but maybe some of you have, where you have an ex or an ex-partner or an ex-husband or ex-father or whatever you want to call them, or a mother, and they're just quite not communicative, or they're not communicable. Right? You really can't communicate with them. You struggle a little bit. Golly, you wish you could be heard. So there's something there, and that's something that we want to teach. But really, it's not about offering solutions. So if your child comes to you, like my child will come to me all the time about school. Oh, school sucks. It's this, it's that. The teachers don't care, or they don't want to teach. And so what I'll do is I'll often repeat, wow, you know what? That sounds really crazy. Like, it sounds like you're saying that nobody really wants to teach at your school, and that the teachers just are so overwhelmed. And I said, I totally understand. That must be really frustrating to you. And I said, and you just connected with him in that moment by acknowledging him. And you connect with him, go, man, it really sucks, and I'm really sorry. It must make you feel powerless, because you're having to go to school and you're not getting what you want. I'm really sorry about that, buddy. And it's not about me going, well, have you tried this? And can you do this? And what about this? And what about you? And this and that. I'm not trying to fix him. What I'm trying to do is disarm him. I'm trying to pull him out of his shell so that he can then be vulnerable and open to being able to communicate with him and share something with him after that. Because once he's open, he'll let you know, well, Dad, what do you think I could do? Oh, okay, well, great. Let me offer you a solution. Then you pulled the turtle out of the shell, and he's like asking you, okay, can you help me here? And that's really where the power is. That's where the power lies. And that's not only with your child, that's with your co-parent, your husband, your spouse, your partner, whatever it is, that is with, and Christina's probably looking at me going, golly, why couldn't you have gotten this 8 years ago, sweetheart? I was working on it, so.
Yes, that's pretty funny. We have been working on it, but it's an acquired skill. The majority of us weren't taught this in childhood. We were taught to close down, to argue, to push away, to avoid anything but resolve. And so, it's not surprising that I don't even know what the statistics are today, but more than 60% of marriages end in divorce. And it's the inability to truly communicate about important issues, intimate issues, which requires vulnerability. And when we are locked down, nobody's getting in, we're Fort Knox, and vulnerability can't be present. And it's a necessary ingredient. And most of us go, well, gee, what is vulnerability? We will do another talk on that another time, because vulnerability is essential to having like those deep, intimate relationships and a really rich quality of life. And communication is one of the keys. And I want to share with you the benefit of doing this, because I still experience the frustration. I was laughing at Calvin, because it's like, I'm dealing with this now. I don't have a solution to dealing with the ex. It's been 15 years of dealing with this person that has the same mentality, which, I'm sharpening my skill.
Well, I want to jump in here too, because you do have solutions. She's come up with a lot of great solutions that would probably work for about thousands and thousands of other people. I just keep telling her every time it comes up, like there's a new situation, new thing, I said, oh, this is great. This is just another opportunity for us to come up with an even better solution for people. Because I really believe that that's what we're all here for. We're all here to experience something, to be able to share it with somebody else. That's what evolution is. And we're here to help people evolve in their relationships, evolve in their health, evolve in their financial disparity, evolve in their abundance, evolve in all of these different places. Maybe we're living to be evolved. And it's because of the practices that we've been put in front of. We didn't choose this. We didn't both choose to be divorced parents with some pretty intense co-parenting relationships. A lot of you know my story and what I went through, and that was something that was freed, a burden was freed upon me by outside forces, and it was a blessing, and it allowed me to be able to do the work that I needed to do with my son and with myself. It still took time. And that's one thing I really do want to challenge Crystena on is that vulnerability, is working with people about that, because the challenge why most people, especially men, I think, have such a tough time with being vulnerable is because when we were young, that's when we were most vulnerable. And when we were young, we got shut down a lot. We got, really, the times have changed. Okay, it used to be, it's like, man up, can't cry, be tough, be strong, be this. And so every time we were little boys, we were vulnerable at times, and we got shut down. Unless you were blessed to have been in a great, family environment where your mom was really open and encouraging that vulnerability and expression, then you were able to kind of cultivate that. But most of us got shut down to where it was like, you can't cry, little boys don't cry. And, you got to be a big man, and you got to step up, and you can't let people see your emotions and all this stuff. And so as men, we struggle with that. And so being vulnerable is a very scary thing, because I remember when I started being vulnerable with Crystena and sharing things, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. That seems to be a common theme in our relationship. She was waiting on a shoe to drop from me because of our relationship dynamic, and whenever I would be vulnerable and open, I was waiting for the other shoe to drop because of my experiences in relationship. So here we were, until we started to get to the point where we started to become vulnerable together, and then we would just kind of sit with it and allow it to be in the space. And that would create more of a connection in the relationship. And it's still been tough. It's still been challenging. We still struggle to this day. But the cool part is that our awareness has become, it's not about who we are. It's about our past experiences and who we've been. And once you really recognize that in the other person, and you have two people that really want to make the effort, it becomes a lot easier. It doesn't mean that it becomes easy. It just becomes easier. You're not fighting for something when you're going through the process, and you don't have to worry about somebody projecting onto you. Like even last night, we had something come up. I'd reached my limit with just being tired and overwhelmed with something. And I was literally shutting down, so I started to become a little bit sharp. And she recognized it. She goes, you know what? Why don't you just take some time? And at first I was kind of like, oh my gosh, she's rejecting me. And then we stayed connected, and we talked it out. And she was like, I'm not mad at you. And I had to hear that in order to be able to relax and be okay with it. Because at first remember what she talked about earlier, the story. I was making a story up in my head like, oh my gosh, she's rejecting me. Oh my gosh, this isn't going to work out. It's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. It's going to be this. It's going to be that. Blah blah blah. And like that's the thought that's going through my head so fast. But it was like because of our relationship and our dynamic, we've understood to share with each other what we're feeling. And I said, you know what triggered me was when you said I wasn't being supportive, because that's a big one for me, because I am showing up for you as much as I possibly can. So that was a good one.
I wish we didn't have to do the mute and unmute thing so we could banter a little bit, but that's what he heard. What I had said was, I don't feel like you're supporting me right now. But what he heard was, you're not supporting me. And that might be a minor distinction, but it's a huge, it really is a huge distinction, because it's semantics, and semantics are so important. So again, that's not what I said at all, but he had to work through what's the story I'm making it mean. Even though I was in a space where I was like, you know what, this is my issue to deal with. I'm really not upset with you. The best way that you can support me right now is to go honor yourself and what you need, because you're pushing past your own limits right now. You had expressed you were tired about 30 minutes ago and wanted to go to bed. And so I was seeing the edge come in, because he pushed past his own limits to want to be there for me. And the beautiful thing about it is to be able to cultivate this space where I could recognize that now. This was a great experience where I recognized that, and I went, wow, I appreciate you wanting to be here for me, and the best way that you can support me right now is to go honor yourself. Because anytime we push past our own limit, we then step in and we open the door to obligation. And now we are getting frustrated, and resentment comes in, irritation, and the snippiness and the snide comments and the underhanded remarks. All of that comes in when our intention was, I just want to love you and support you. And then we end up 180 degrees from that. And that's the slippery slope of communication. Like it's such a fun, amazing thing. And I know you want to share something else, but I also want to leave them with the positive of what's the benefit of doing this and some takeaways. So sure. If you want to share more.
No, and I was just going to say that, in the past, what happens is that would have escalated. She would have said something, it would have hurt my feelings. I wouldn't have been doing the work, and I would have come back and attacked her. And what was really beautiful about it was that I knew before she called me out and said, you're pushing yourself past your own limit. In my head, I had that thought going, I've reached my limit. I need to say something, but I really want to be here for her. And I remember it so vividly. And so what was cool is that, yes, I did push past my limit, but when I got called out on it, I didn't take it personal. I just kind of said, at first I was like, okay, you're right. And well, I wasn't even that great. I still had my challenge, and and then it was just that moment of, the thing that triggered me was the support, because I didn't feel like you were really acknowledging me for my own wanting to support you. And then she cleaned that up, and it cleared everything up, and it was fine. And that's what we're talking about here. It's an art, and it's not something that you just master from day one. It is something that takes time, it takes energy, and most importantly, it takes two people. You can do the work on yourself. You can work with us. You can work with, reading books and taking seminars and programs and doing all that stuff. It will benefit you. And I want to encourage you, if you've got a spouse that you struggle with, there's a way to do it, and we'll help teach you how to invite them to want to get better, because it's tough. If your spouse doesn't want to get better, it's pretty much, you almost have to draw a line and say, listen, I really want this relationship to improve. And if you're not willing to put the effort in, then I've got to move on in my life, because I'm not going to continue to fight this. And that's a big one, especially when you've got kids involved.
Yeah, it is. That's a tough one. It really does take two people. And the best thing you can do for any relationship in your life is to continue to cultivate that deeper skill within yourself. And I can tell you from experience that it takes a lot of courage to be the bigger person, you take some hits, you just do. It's part of cultivating that vulnerability and that presence of mind and that ability to see the other person as not attacking you, but speaking through their filters and their wounds. And by focusing on yourself and becoming a better communicator, you then open the door and give your spouse or whatever relationship that you have, you give that other person permission to say, hey, it's safe. I'm not going to attack you back. It's safe to open up. And like Calvenn said, you start to invite them into let's try this in a different way. It's going to be okay. And it takes effort, and it takes time, and a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage. But the thing that is so rewarding, if any of you are asking yourselves, well, why the heck would I want to be a better communicator? Like, it sucks taking the high road. I have said this myself. Calvin's going to laugh, because there were so many times where I was like, fuck the high road. This sucks. Like, I just keep taking hits. I'm losing relationships. This sucks. But there is that part of me that is committed to growth and expansion and being the best version of myself that I can be. So I stuck it out. And I experienced, a couple days ago, something really amazing with my 13-year-old son, who, there was a lot of difficulty about a year ago, and I sent him out to live with his dad. Communication was very rocky between my son and I. And I was on the phone with him, and him and his dad were having an argument, and he's going, "Mom, help." And I said, "Okay, both of you, stop and take a deep breath." And they did, And I said, okay, I was talking to his father, and I said, like, what's going on? And he said, well, he's being disrespectful, and he needs to express himself in a calm way. And I said, pause. I said, are you expressing yourself in a calm way right now? How do you feel inside your body? And he's like, well, no, I'm frustrated and I'm angry. And I said, okay. I said, but you're unable to express yourself in a calm way, and you're expecting your 13-year-old child to be able to express himself in a calm way when he's feeling angry and frustrated. Well, but I'm entitled to feel this way. And I said, okay, you can feel frustrated, but why is he then not entitled to feel and express himself in the same way? Like, it's impossible to express yourself calmly when you are emotionally heightened. It takes awareness and effort and deep breaths to literally physiologically calm yourself down and then access your cortex again, or your thinking brain, right? And when I pointed that out to him, he huffed and walked out of the room. He was not open to, let's explore this further, or wow, yeah, I am expecting my child to do something that I'm not able to do myself, and I haven't therefore taught my child. All I taught my child is you explode when you're frustrated, and that's how you express yourself. So imagine the bind that puts a 13-year-old child in. How frustrating is that? So what I did then was I validated my son's feelings. I validated his logic. You are absolutely right in the way that you're thinking about this, and in doing that, the benefit, and this is the golden nugget, this is what was so rewarding, is my 13-year-old son then took it a step further, and I got to see what all of those years of taking the high road and taking all of those hits and those punches, I got to see what the silver lining in that was, the gem. It made it all worth it, kind of like the pain of childbirth is gone the moment you hold that baby. This was one of those parenting moments for me. And I get a little emotional because it was so amazing. He then went a step further and said, well, he took responsibility for his part in the communication. And he said, well, I did say this in a sarcastic way, and I can see how that would have triggered Dad even more. And I just sat and listened. And then he even went further and said, I'm going to go apologize to Dad for my part in the miscommunication. And the 46-year-old was holding on to the grudge. And the 13-year-old went out and apologized and came back in. And I was able to say, hey, if he can't forgive you, that's okay. He's having a hard time working through his own emotions. I'm so proud of you for what you just did, because you did something that most 40 and 50 and 60-year-old adults still are not able to do. And you should be really proud of yourself. So that right there is the gem of why should I be the bigger person? And those are the things, those are the experiences you have to look forward to when you start on this path, because it takes a lot of courage, but the reward is really, really, really great. And I would encourage all of you to consider being the bigger person. And if you're here on this call, you have what it takes within you to level up and be the bigger person for those other people in your life that you care and love. And you know? So kudos to you. The action steps that you want to take are, first, cultivate that awareness to recognize when you're getting triggered and when you're shutting down. Recognize that. Ask yourself this question: what is the story I'm telling myself right now? This person just came at me and said this. What am I making it mean in my mind? Okay? Practice becoming a better listener. Get curious. Cultivate that curiosity. What is the other person really trying to express here? And once you work through that personal story, you'll be able to see better what the other person is trying to say. And listen to yourself first. Those are kind of the action steps I would recommend to start to cultivate this. You need to hear what you have to say. And that was one thing I learned. I need to hear what I have to say. I need to listen to myself. And in doing that, you create the space to then be more open to what the other person needs, because they're wounded and they don't have the ability. And you're going to teach them that by doing it yourself and living it yourself. So, yeah. All right, back to you, Calvin.
All right, well, that's how you level up. And, you know, nothing against any of the participants on the call that didn't know that they were going to be a part. I was that guy too. You know, I was the one that would hold on grudges with kids and having to own up to certain things. So, you know, it doesn't matter. These things don't define you. They're just your experiences. They're stuff that we all have to work through. But when I look back now, I beat myself up a little bit sometimes, because I think, golly, I was that guy that would hold a grudge against a child and expecting the child to do things that I wasn't even able and capable of doing. But through that growth of my own, that through that wanting to level up and leveling up in my life, I've been able to witness that. And there are times where still Crystena to this day has to bring things to my attention and go, hey, I can feel this energy that you're holding on to, and can you let this go, or can you look at this for yourself? And, you know, and if it flares something up in me, then I know. And sometimes I'm getting really, really good about being able to let it go. Other times I try to convince myself that she doesn't know what she's talking about still. And it's okay, because that means it's just a deeper root, and there's nothing wrong with me. It's just that we're all going through our own process, and we're all trying to figure out what we can do. And so take those steps that Crystena just shared and level up your life in that way. That's what's going to be able to create the awareness and the art of communication in your life and take your life to a different level. That's what's going to help you up level or level up. That's the power of what we want to share with Living to Be, because in everything that we do, we want to be able to create that for people. So you have anything else you want to share?
No, I just want to say thank you all for being here. You know, I know this call went a little bit long, but it's great information, and I'm really proud of all of you, because as each of us level up in our own lives, we impact the people in our lives and the world. We really don't see the ripple that goes out. We affect everybody. Part of our mission statement. Everything we do affects the people around us in the entire world. And I believe this is the single most greatest gift that you can do and offer anybody in life and offer to the world, is to continually level up yourself and in your own life and be accountable for just yourself, and the rest will take care of itself. So thank you for listening. I hope you all have an amazing day and level up.
All right, well, perfect, everybody. So thank you so much for joining us. We'll just sign off here and say thank you so much for being here and leveling up your life. This is Calvenn Starre, and I'm living to be fit, inspired, unleashed, leveled up, timeless, whatever else you want to call it, and looking to be an amazing communicator. So thank you, Crystena. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for showing up, and have a wonderful rest of your week.